What's going on?
You catch DVs in that hallway from.
Is that thing on?
It should be at the bottom. You see it?
Finished?
It should be on.
Like it's on. It say live.
It say live?
If
you're live, make some
Hey,
noise.
everybody, go ahead and hit like, to all that, return to people. Hit love for all new people.
Yeah.
What's going on, man?
I'm trying to get some camera time.
We're gonna do a recap of the rap.
All right, and then you're gonna get me out of here, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
All right.
Most definitely. We got a great show lined up for you, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna talk about the 100 black men rap, and talk about what they're doing going forward. We're gonna talk about the Black Gun Association because I've had some serious issues pop up over the last week. We gotta move forward.
I'm ready.
So definitely, it's a good time to share, this video because I do guarantee that there'll be some great information passed today. We talk about some serious conversations about guns and responsible gun ownership and gun education, which is needed in our community. We'll dig into all these things. So go ahead and like it, share it, love it, and
You should only shoot who you're aiming at.
Wow.
here you go, man.
This is my fault. I invited DVs in.
You should only shoot who you're aiming
Did the picture pop up over there? See it? Make sure we on.
You gotta be nice, I'm not a civilian anymore.
at. Just don't aim at me.
Right. Bring us on in, Henry. It's time to talk to the people. Guess what now?
To what we had to say.
Turn my phone off.
They had some light skin in the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Reviving Mississippi Show. I'm your host, Dekeither Stamps. We got our co-host here, Mr. Mac Epps. How you doing, Mac?
Man, I'm doing good, brother. I'm energized and I'm ready to go.
That's right. We got brother D. Measy in the studio. Hey, David, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing exceptionally wonderful, and it's an honor, a blessing, and a privilege to be here on your show.
It's definitely an honor to be here. And I want to say thank you to all of the Reviving Mississippi listening audience who tunes in to us every week when we try to give you good information.
Yes, sir.
Mac surprised me, ladies and gentlemen.
What?
How did Max surprise you?
What happened?
Mac shocked me.
I did.
David, you were there.
Oh, Lord, that surprise.
I didn't know that black folks still watch wrestling.
TV wrestling.
Wrestling now.
Yeah, we
Wrestling.
went by Mac's house and let him pay a little visit to him. Watching wrestling. Did everything turn out okay?
Oh yeah. I'm still a little down. I am not apologetic to say that I am a fan of Ric Flair.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well,
But I was a bigger fan of JYD.
Yeah, well, I'm a tremendous Ric Flair fan as well, and I actually model. He's one of the 3 people I model my speaking style after. And, I must say that. But it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see that folks can still come together. Oh, you don't know that? Ric Flair is the man.
I'm looking at his facial. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot see this, but the facial expression he just gave when he heard that Ric Flair was one of his models of speaking.
Here's my issue.
Have you ever heard Ric Flair speak?
Here's my issue with all of it.
Okay, all right.
Rome failed because they started to build these huge coliseums.
Oh, there you go.
And had the people distracted.
That's correct.
We're not distracted.
I'm at a point where I really believe that we would be a much better people if we knew, government and business as a mass, like we know football, wrestling. I sat there and watched folks know the theme songs to 30 different wrestlers.
Before they even came out.
They knew who was coming. I sat there and watched.
Bio and the history of them.
Yeah, right. I mean,
going on in their personal lives.
With this being Black History Month, it would be wonderful if we knew the history of ourselves like we know the history of these different sporting and entertainment industries and who they married and who they had
Sport and play,
children
baby.
with and
Sport and play.
all these things, and that's what we should aspire to do is to is to know it at a cellular level, to understand it at a deep enough level of our own history and our own present.
You want it to be visceral.
Right. Yeah. We have to, you know, this big football game coming up this weekend, and folks gonna
sport and play, baby.
Yeah, folks know the history of each player and what teams they played for and the stats that they've accumulated, and they know all these different things. You know, they know how to coach. You know, they know the different down and distances. They know what kind of plays you run in different situations, and they know the different defenses and who's successful at different lineups and matchups, and they know what happens in the first quarter, and they know what needs to happen in
what year is this now? What year is this?
This is 2017.
So in 1989,
okay,
Ebony magazine issued something called the 50 most important black figures or civil rights figures. What is it? 50 most important figures in Black American history.
Right.
That was in 1989.
Right.
So
2017. How many years is that?
a lot.
It's almost 40, right?
No. 89?
89.
17.
90 is 10. Okay, 10.
So let me read these names off.
I just want to highlight, as much time as we've had to learn these, have we learned these as well as we learned football?
Right.
Have we learned these as well as we learned TV wrestling?
Wrestling.
Right. So let me just read this off.
And let me say this for all the wrestling fans and everything. That's an outlet. Because when you deal with serious reality like we do every now and then, you gotta have a little outlet, don't you? Go crazy.
Right.
Some people live in that outlet.
So most people,
that's true.
You know, there's a lot of people in our society who can rattle off 50 football players and their history and their
and all
stats.
the teams they got traded to.
Right, and all that, right? There's people who can name 50 basketball players that have played in the NBA and things like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm going to read off 50 names that were published by Ebony magazine. You know, just ask the listening audience and yourselves, do you know a little history about each one of these
I have a
people?
PowerPoint on that. I have a PowerPoint on every one of those individuals based off of that article.
Okay. So first, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Mary McLeod Bethune, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert S. Abbott,
Chicago Defender.
Richard Allen,
That's right, AME Church.
Louis Armstrong,
Which one is he? Louis Armstrong? That's the entertainer.
Yeah. Ella Baker,
That's the civil rights superwoman.
James Baldwin,
That's the writer extraordinaire.
Benjamin Banneker,
That is the mathematician and architect of Washington, D.C.
Ida B. Wells Barnett,
That is one of my sheroes who stood up and fought on behalf of black people and told them if they wasn't going to get protected, they need to leave where they were, and they did.
Ralph J. Bunchy,
Ralph J. Bunch is the hardest working man in Washington, D.C., and he worked so hard and so capably that he was able to avert 2 different wars.
George Washington Carver,
That is the multi-genius who used his black divinity, his black excellence, and his divine personal responsibility to create a multitude of products from simple farm, some peanuts and soybeans and whatnot.
Martin R. Delaney,
Martin Delaney is one of the greatest freedom fighters on behalf of black people, who not only used his pen but his activism to make life better for black folks.
Charles R. Drew,
Charles Drew was obviously the doctor who could, in some cases, pass for white, but did not allow that to stop him from working for black people. And when he died, unfortunately, could not get admitted to the white hospital, which was closer than the black.
Paul Lawrence Dunbar,
That's right. That's our poet laureate, one of the greatest poets ever produced by America.
Edward Kennedy Ellington,
That's Duke, the Duke Ellington, with the top hat, the Baron Somni top hat.
the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey,
I don't need to say too much about him. Over 6 million followers, Pan-African, superb and supreme, and the one from which all others who have followed owe their allegiance to him. He is the godfather, if not the grandfather.
Prince Hall,
Prince Hall got the charter from the white folks, went to England to do it, and came back to set up something so that black people could have a private space to discuss communal uplift and rebuilding.
Fannie Lou Hamer,
The shero extraordinaire who took that whooping and that beating on behalf of black people and eventually stood on on the Supreme, in Washington D.C. and said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired," and made the president shut down.
Actually, it was Atlantic City.
Atlantic City, thank you.
At the Democratic National Convention.
Appreciate you.
Where she expressed those thoughts.
I love an appropriate correction.
W.C. Handy.
W.C. Handy was the original father, the hailed father of the blues, because he actually wrote the stuff down.
Okay. Francis E.W. Harper.
Francis E.W. Harper was also a poet and an activist in her own right during the early 1800s.
Charles H. Houston.
Charles H. Houston was the multi-genius as well, who was one of the intellectual architects of what ended up becoming Brown versus Board and eventually the Civil Rights Movement.
Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes, I have known many rivers. He was an African-centered scholar, warrior who operated as a poet. And he enlightened almost everyone who came in contact with him.
Zora Neale Hurston.
That's right. She's known for many things, but should be known for the one she talking about, holding my mule or holding my horse, where she shows us that black religious practices extend from the African continent even till today into black churchianity, but a lot of black people don't know it.
Jack Johnson.
Jack Johnson was one of the black supermen who came along and was the heavyweight champion of the world in a day and time when white folks could not deal with that. White supremacy could not deal with that, even though he had a white manager and made more money for white people than he did for black.
James Weldon Johnson.
James Weldon Johnson, along with his brother Russell Mine, was not only a lawyer and an educator, he also wrote the Black Liberation Anthem and
That's
sing.
Right.
That's right.
That's right.
That every church should sing every week.
That's right. Ernest E. Just.
He was an inventor, and I can't remember what it was that he invented.
He was from Howard University. He was one of the leading zoologists.
Zoologists, yeah.
And flip this page over there. All right, Joe Louis.
Yes, he was another black superman who was a boxer who came along after Jack Johnson when black people were allowed to be heavyweight champion of the world. Because up until between Jack Johnson and him, black people weren't allowed to even compete.
You know, because I find it amazing that you couldn't find during that time period a strong black man who had the willpower to conquer in a ring toe to toe.
They wouldn't let him. They wouldn't even let him fight it for the title. That's why when you hear people talking about affirmative action, you have to realize that for a long time, the AEGIS, the Aegis of white supremacy, was not allowing free access to competition from black people. That's what made Jesse Owens and Joe Louis seem so special when in fact they were really mediocre.
Okay. Malcolm X.
Oh, well, come on. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do I need to say anything about Malcolm? Everybody know about Malcolm. I mean, he's our black shining prince.
Okay. Benjamin E. Mays.
Benjamin E. Mays was the educator supreme.
That's right.
Who I use him along with Dr. John Henry Clark. Benjamin Mays says, it's a miracle for us to still even be here. It's a miracle for us to still even be here. And he, of course, influenced Martin Luther King, but thousands of countless others. He's an exceptional educator.
Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens, once again, black superman in track and field, who was reduced to racing horses because the economics was not there to allow for his genius in terms of running track. But, like so many others before him, he had to eat that humble pie as he was kicking butt across the globe.
Adam Clayton Powell, Jr.
Oh, yeah, the greatest politician that black people have ever produced, who's also a minister over in Harlem. And he did what the best politician should do. He brought home the goods for his constituents.
That's the whole point, to bring home the bacon. A. Philip Randolph.
A. Philip Randolph was the organizer supreme. And not just a mobilizer, but an organizer supreme, who before you had to march on Washington with Martin Luther King Jr. in '63, he organized for over 100,000 to come to the mall on Washington and forced the president to sign an order that allowed for segregation in the military ranks so that black people could have access to those jobs that were closed out.
Okay. Paul Robeson.
No, and let me also mention, A. Philip Randolph was also the secret architect of the '63 March on Washington.
And before we even go beyond that, let me just also interject. You made a great point. There's a difference between mobilization and organization.
Yes.
Over the last 40 or 50 years, we have done a lot more mobilization than organization. Organization means that when you go into a neighborhood, you have the name, address, telephone number, email address of everybody in every house and understand the conditions of everyone in each house so that you can address the needs properly, but also distribute resources so that they are not wasted and abused. And we're going to get to that when we talk about the 100 Black Men Rally. But let's move on to Paul Robeson.
Paul Robeson is another black Superman, but not just a black Superman in athletics, which he was. He was also a black Superman in the arts and in literature, and he also was on stage, one of the black people to play Othello in a popular way, even though the Othello character has always been black. Most of the time white people were playing up to that point. But he stood up for the rights of not only black people, but for political freedom. And as a result, he was ostracized for that, and folks couldn't ride with him. But Paul Robeson was a hero of heroes, and he was a man amongst men.
Okay. And next is Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, Jackie Robinson, once again, another mediocre athlete who was allowed access because he was willing to acquiesce to the white power structure. But once again, he expressed black genius, that vital adaptability. That's strong people.
Well, he was mediocre amongst our ranks.
Yeah, he was mediocre amongst our ranks.
What if they allowed Satchel Paige to come into the league 5 years before that? If that had happened, Satchel Paige would have been down in history.
But I'm saying he would show people up, and what they couldn't deal with was the ego that said that white people have to be superior, and that he was showing. Satchel Paige would show you up and talk bad about you.
That's right. He was less amenable, but way more talented.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Whereas Jackie Robinson was extremely talented, but he was less talented than his other cohorts, but much more amenable. And I'm not knocking Jackie Robinson, I ain't knocking Joe Louis, and I ain't knocking Jesse Owens. I'm just highlighting what we've had to go through to get to this point.
Right. Mary Church Terrell.
I'm not as up on her, but Mary Church Terrell was a civil rights activist, one of the forefront of the women's rights movement of that day, and she was extremely active in terms of promoting the civil rights agenda.
She was actually the first president of the National Association of Colored Women, which she helped organize, and is still going on today. Howard Thurman.
Yeah, Howard Thurman was a theologian supreme, who one of the books, something about a river, something with a river. But he was always promoting reconciliation. His theological style promoted reconciliation.
Right, and he was also a philosopher that understood and brought a higher understanding to folks to understand what's going on inside the black community, and was able to articulate it in such a way which then the great orators like Martin Luther King and other folks took that material and laced it into their delivery of what they were delivering to bring these great messages forward that help unify and build our people forward. So a lot of these things were people working together, folks behind the scenes doing the research and coming up with that, or creating that logos mindset that's in their hearts and minds, and then put it down, and other people took that material and brought it forward.
Right.
William Monroe Trotter.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite warriors who fought against the insanity of Booker T. Washington and challenged W.B. Du Bois at the same time. A fearless firebrand who was not afraid to take on white supremacy or black stupidity and inferiority. And he was one of the main tips of the spear against Booker T. Washington's accommodationist tactics. People always talk about W.B. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington. That's a misnomer. It was William Monroe Trotter.
That's right.
William Monroe Trotter going against that much more so. But he also didn't just challenge Booker T. Washington. He wasn't just challenging black folks fighting internal wars. He was a Pan-African to the core. He was proud to be a black man, and he took his fight all the way overseas against white folks.
Now, but also,
and I'm using that term because that was the term they used of that day.
Yeah, but now the fight is greater. It's black and white supremacy.
Yes.
But now let me also add.
I'm sure looking for some black supremacy.
let me add quote unquote supremacy. Let me just also add in challenging ourselves to reach a higher truth.
Oh, no doubt about that.
You know, challenging each other. It's not necessarily that they were going straight for blows, but challenging the thoughts, the ideas. We must challenge our ideas, even amongst leaders.
That's correct.
So that we can reach higher truths without just getting sucked into the Negro mess.
That's right. That's absolutely
the ego of the Negro is is probably our third highest target.
Yes, sir.
And so, but challenging that brings us to higher truths, but creating good spaces to have that discourse, because he actually led the anti-Booker T. Washington campaign that led to the Nigerian movement and to the NAACP being founded.
Right. The Niagara, for those who don't know, the Niagara movement is part of him and Ida B. Wells and W.B. Du Bois, and it was the black protest organization. Mm-hmm. And then they wanted to go so black that the European Jewish supporters of them couldn't deal with that, so they jumped out, and then they formed an NAACP. Right. And they took W.B. Du Bois, he was on both boards, and so then that underfunded the Niagara movement, mm-hmm. and they had two movements trying to do the same thing. So many of the people from the Niagara movement end up coming over to the NAACP, and that's why you had white ownership and control of the NAACP all the way up until the, I think it was late 50s.
Okay. Next is Sojourner Truth.
Yeah, Sojourner Truth, ain't I a woman too? Sojourner Truth was a 6'1" black woman, strong black woman, though illiterate.
In 1790s, in the late 1790s.
Right, that's right.
1800s. And when you're 6'1" at that time.
I know, right. So she towered over most men and could outdo most men the way she talked, but she was all woman. And she stood up not only for women's rights, but also for racial rights. And she wasn't one of these confused feminists running around here throwing their men away. She was for everybody all at the same time and demanded that everybody get respect in an appropriate dose. And so hats off to Sojourner Truth. I love her story, and I agree with 99.9% of what she had to say.
Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, Harriet Tubman. Well, her story is a lot more well known than Sojourner Truth. But a lot of times we praise Harriet Tubman without knowing there was more than one Harriet Tubman. Mm-hmm. Harriet Tubman is one name that covers a whole bunch of folks.
That's right.
That was getting folks out of their situations in slavery. It wasn't just enslaved people running away. It was also free black people mm-hmm. had to get away at times. And so Harriet Tubman is not just one woman. Mm-hmm. Harriet Tubman represents a whole bunch of people who was helping people get away. And also the real woman was actually amazing because they called her Black Moses. That's what the troops called her, Black Moses, mm-hmm. because they love her. And Black Moses is exceptionally beautiful because the men said that about her. The men were willing to follow her. She was also to do a sermon, set a sermon up. So black female preachers looked to Harriet Tubman because she was a woman doing what normally men would do, but men acquiesced to her because she had a divine spirit about her. A scout, a spy, a soldier, also a preacher, and a leader, mm-hmm. and Black Moses. And so men bowed down to this queen in her own day, and she didn't have to be buck ugly in order to get her way. Mm-hmm. Which, you know.
What's the quote?
But before you...
okay, because you know that...
But what I also want to highlight about this is her task was to follow a star.
Yes.
To reach liberation.
North Star.
You know, when we talk about what we have to do today, no one has told anyone that you must follow a star along a certain route mm-hmm. to get to your liberation. And you are in such oppression mm-hmm. that that's all you know, and that's all you focus on, and that's all you do. The things that we give out every week are small steps. Right, small steps to take towards making your life better and making your children's life better.
Right.
And so, you know, when I get a level of resistance from some folks about some things, I said, well, what we're asking is not as hard as what has been asked or done in the history. And when you really go deep into our history, it's kind of like, you know, the challenges don't even compare.
No, it's not a comparison.
The commitment levels don't even compare.
That's why Mays can say what he said. You know, it's a miracle that we're still here.
Right.
Right. I mean, I go for Dr. Clark too For those who begin their history with enslavement, everything else seems like progress. I'm for that. I'm also for what Benjamin May said. It's a miracle that we're still here. So as much as I can harp on the pathologies, the legitimate pathologies, and wallowing in victimization and all types of problems that plague the black community, as much as I can harp on that, I also have to harp on the redemptive, adaptive vitality of black women in particular, who've had all these experiments done on them in the absence of their man, castrated by society. In the absence of that protection, have had all these experiments done on them, and through their adaptive vitality have still produced the best that could possibly be produced in this environment. So we can't just talk about black history without talking about the first portion of that history, which is black women.
Okay. Henry McNeil Turner.
Yeah, Henry McNeil Turner was one of those people, one of the AME ministers who attempted to rescue the early version of black churchianity from the Eurocentric notion by stating that if God had a color, God would be the color of the first men created, which is a black man. And so Henry McNeil Turner was on the forefront of the Pan-African agenda. When you talk about Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Booker T. Washington, you got to first start out talking about Henry McNeil Turner. You can't isolate these people. Well, it's not wise to isolate these people as though they come alone. They come from a history and a tradition which was always resisting the Eurocentric notion to judge us by someone else's eyes as opposed to judging us by our own standards. And that's where a lot of our problems come in. When we allow ourselves to be judged by standards that other people create instead of by the standards that God created for us to judge ourselves by.
And
I was going to say, I was just talking to Bishop, to Pastor Boyd, and I had to ask him privately. I said, why is it that he's one of the only AME churches that haven't forgotten that African is in the front of Methodist Episcopal? Okay, but
since we're in it, these are in alphabetical order. So I want to make sure that people understand this and make it clear that these are in alphabetical order. Henry McNeil Turner, who was born in 1834. Next is Nat Turner, who died in 1831.
Yeah, Nat Turner is a black preacher, first and foremost, who used the literal and the figurative word of Almighty God to craft a liberation narrative that demanded immediate action. And so we are extremely fortunate that Nate Parker has recently made a movie that deals with Nat Turner. And even though the movie is, of course, not the real thing, it allows us to go and research the real thing. And you find out that black people have been resistant from the very beginning. He just, if it hadn't been for the drinking of some of the folks that was with him, and if it hadn't been for the snitching of some of the folks that were scared to be with him, he would have been much more successful.
Okay.
All right, a little bit more information
about Henry McNeil.
Henry McNeil Turner.
What state was he from?
From Georgia. He's a minister, politician, 12th elected bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. He was a pioneer in Georgia in organizing new congregations of the independent black denomination. He was free in South Carolina. And he also...
so now, stop right there. I want you to look that up. I didn't want to bring that up. I want to make sure that you...
Oh, yeah, no.
So he left South Carolina, where Nat Turner
That's right.
All right, came from. He was born 3 years after Nat Turner died, so the records show. But that connection is there.
Oh, yeah.
How I was going to bring up the point of how the struggle transcends life and it moves forward.
You know, they were punishing black people after Nat Turner.
Right, and we're in a constant struggle of a continuum of progress and struggle.
That's right.
We're in that continuum.
When it says his works, it just says respect black.
Right.
So that's his primary work.
Right.
It was to respect black.
Yeah. He pressed it home too.
Oh yeah.
He had serious contention even then, even though it was African Baptist, African Methodist, the African Lodge, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion. Even though we knew who we were back then, there was still an effort, and it had to do with accepting money from white philanthropy, and that's where really the breakdown came about. And so folks didn't want to offend the white people who were helping them with gifts and care baskets and employment. And so they started leaning towards the conservative apologetic model that unfortunately some of our folks still cling to today.
Oh yeah.
David Walker.
Yeah, David Walker. I said this the other day and it hurt somebody's feeling. I said Minister Farrakhan adheres to a greater degree, or identifies to a greater degree with David Walker's appeal than he does with the Quran. And the person didn't know how to deal with that because they hadn't read David Walker's appeal.
That's right. That's right.
But once you read David Walker's appeal, it is the precursor to any organized resistance narrative that has been followed or created
That's right.
in America. Right. It is the precursor, David Walker's appeal, in writing.
Right. It was an 1829 pamphlet that he published, and y'all can Google it. It's called Walker's Appeal. You just Google Walker's Appeal, 1829 pamphlet, and you take a read, and you will do yourself justice if you call yourself a part of this whole process and have any level of understanding of what you're dealing with from a foundational standpoint.
That's right. David Walker got killed, by the way, in a Masonic-like ceremony.
That's right.
For his teaching. Right. Another brother who's not on there George G.M. James got killed in a similar fashion because some people don't want you to set them free.
Madam C.J. Walker.
Madam C.J. Walker. How did she get the name Madam? I guess we're not going to talk about that right now. But Madam C.J. Walker is the first self-made millionaire, first female self-made millionaire of any color, and the first self-made millionaire amongst black people, period. And she did so with hair care products, which we have the ability now to debate these things, but that ability can only be given to us because other people have made the ground smooth enough for us to debate it, right? When you're in the swamp, you don't got time to debate. You got to wade through the water. So now that the ground is smooth, some people like me like to come on and debate that she was promoting black self-hate or taking advantage or exploiting black self-hate. But the truth of the matter is black people always wanted to do stuff with our hair. Even back in the Egyptian Nile Valley days, we had hot combs back then. And so she just found a way to do it and help people, get their due done. And we still don't control the industry now. That's sad. Back in her day, we controlled the industry. Now, other people do. So we might need to bring Madam C.J. Walker back with all of her special talents.
Unless you bring segregation back, you won't get.
You won't get Madam C.J. Walker.
But let's go back to Booker T. Washington.
Oh yeah, Booker T. Washington is one of my favorite Uncle Toms. John Henry Clark called him a strategic Uncle Tom. In other words, he wasn't just timing for the sake of timing. He was timing on behalf of institution building and setting up a black economic infrastructure on behalf of black people.
That's right.
Today we have people that call themselves black conservatives. I wonder what exactly are they conserving? Their own miserable apathy and second-rate citizenship? In this case, he was conservative because of the need to be conservative and for institution building and for the building of a black economic infrastructure. So we need more Booker T. Washington.
And let me also highlight this point. He was, he'd tear a piece of paper up and write some notes on it and throw it out the window. So other brothers who were the quote-unquote radicals could pick it up.
That's true.
And go and run with it.
That's very true. So, and he'd also financed them underneath the table. And he was also had a way station for the Underground Railroad. And he also supported some of the same things that he fought against publicly. He supported them privately. So, but that's what history came along and said later. And he knew that history would redeem his name. But many people today still get caught up in the false argument that it was W.B. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington, which is an unfathomable mischaracterization of the truth. I don't want to call it a lie. It's a mischaracterization of the truth. If you want to find out who the rival of Booker T. Washington was, go to William Monroe Trotter.
There you go. That's right. Next, Phyllis Wheatley.
Yeah, Phyllis Wheatley was also a poet. She's one of the first published poets. I don't particularly like her works, but that don't take away from the fact that at the time she was writing, they were saying that black people were too dumb to write. It's easy, you know. It's always funny.
We're talking about 1753-ish.
Yeah, right.
You know, when she was making these deep and dense writings.
So here you got a black woman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you already know women are too dumb to do anything, right?
That's
you know
what they say.
Right. You know that women, regardless of the color, women are too dumb to do anything. And then you got
that's
black people who are beasts.
Right.
Right. So now you got a beast of someone who can't do nothing, who now is writing poetry at the top level of poetry writing. So she just killing all kinds of stereotypes that are false. That black women ain't smart, that black women, or for that matter women period, are not intelligent, and also that black people are not even human. Well, I ain't never known no gorilla, orangutan, or no seal to do any type of writing. Okay, so go ahead.
Daniel Hale Williams.
Daniel Hale Williams, well, that was another doctor, if I'm correct. Right, a surgeon, and what was a pioneer in their field of surgery. And so
he
once
was
again,
the first successful heart operation.
But now once again, now ain't nothing special about that. If you understand along the Nile Valley, they were already doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
But what makes it special is in light of the racism, the overt, institutionalized, and personalized racism, which was pushing these scientific theories of black inferiority. So these type of actions highlight, and this new movie that came out with the women, the four women, Hidden Figures.
Right.
So you got people that have always known that black people were smart and was using us to advance their projects, at the same time spreading the narrative that black people ain't ish.
Right.
All right, that intellectually we just ain't there. Yeah, well, it's easy to say I stink if you lock me out the bathroom.
Right.
Okay.
Carter G. Woodson.
Yes, Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of Negro, the man who started Negro History Day, which became Negro History Week, which became Negro, or should I say Black History Month.
That's right.
And we celebrating it right now. I start celebrating mine on January the 12th, 13th, and 14th. Thank you, Kenny Stokes. And Martin Luther King holiday weekend, I started celebrating it. I won't stop till the middle of March, because we did with Black Women's Month, Black Women's History Month, or is it Women's History Month, one of them. But Carter G. Woodson was the second black person to get a PhD. W.B. Du Bois was the first, and he was a hard-working man, had very little of a social life, and was all about the uplifting of black people through literary scholarship.
Richard Wright.
Richard Wright was the author, if I'm correct, of Black Boy, and also Native Son. If I'm correct, he came up with the character of Bigger Thomas. And Bigger was an angry black man. And Bigger was tired of putting up with it, and he did some awful stuff, but it showed the discontent in the black community through his characters. And if I'm correct, he did he do Invisible Man? Yeah. And so here is a man who had to go into a room and turn all the lights on so he could be seen, which is a metaphor to say, here I am in plain sight and you still don't see me, because black people were being, of course, denied. And now we live in a colorblind society where it hasn't changed too much, in the sense that you still got people trying to avoid black facts by saying we should just be multicultural and be human, when you still got a government working against the interests of black people.
Let me add a few more. This list don't stop at those 50, but there are just a few more.
And that was in 1989, by the way.
Right. Let me just add another. Medgar Evers.
Right. Medgar Evers, obviously the brother of Charles Evers, whose name is praised every day this radio station comes on. And Medgar Evers was a Mississippi martyr in an excellent, exceptional book done by Michael Vincent Williams, Mississippi Martyr. And you can see the struggle of Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers is really, in some senses, a more important, or just as important figure as Martin Luther King, because he actually got stuff done in terms of economics and boycotts, and also organizing. And
much of the things that we are benefiting from today inside of our black institutions here in Mississippi, he helped to sew those things together and institutionalize them so that they could be cemented long term.
He was down with T.R.M. Howard, so he had a chance to see what a successful boycott and mobilization, and then more importantly, organization looked like.
Dr. John Henry Clark.
Oh yeah, Dr. John Henry Clark.
That's not on. He's not. He didn't make Evelyn's list.
No, he wasn't dead.
But let me just. Some folks wasn't dead either.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and.
Dr. John Henry Clark, born in Alabama, Union Springs, Alabama, has excellent a documentary by Wesley Snipes called A Great and Mighty Walk. That is A Great and Mighty Walk. And if you view it, you'll get an idea of what world he come from. He was a Marxist at one time, even though he never joined the Young Communist group. He always was Pan-African. He'd been to the military, excellent with the mind, wrote so many books and edited so many others and contributed to so many others. He's considered a master teacher, and it is he who said, for those who begin their history with enslavement, everything else seems like progress.
Dr. Amos Wilson.
Amos N. Wilson, in my opinion, is the most comprehensive solution-oriented scholar on the African-American experience. Let me repeat that. Amos Wilson, in my opinion, is the most comprehensive solution-oriented scholar on the African-American experience. He has an exceptional set of books, including Blueprint for Black Power, which, if any pastor or group of pastors chose to read it, would help me not be so angry and upset, because you can see the things that you're asking for written down, and you can follow them if you're willing to read. Also, the Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children, and a host of other articles and books. He has a multitude of lectures on YouTube for people who want to go further in terms of solutions for the black community.
Muammar Gaddafi.
Muammar Gaddafi is not quite black, but he come from that group of Berber tribes who got some black in them. But Muammar Gaddafi is exceptional because he wasn't attempting, he actually was doing it, working with the United African Movement to set up a standard by which Africa could have its own money and be on its own economic system, using their gold and oil as the backup for the system. As you know, America's money is what they call fiat currency, which ain't backed up by nothing except bombs, and so and military might. And so that would have destabilized the European governments, because America's money is actually printed in the Bank of England. So anyway, he presented a global threat. He shared the wealth of the country with his people and gave them a surplus in terms of the oil. And he also had free education, and he also allowed women to have greater access to education and health care. So people paint him out to be a demon and a monster, when in fact he was far from that.
Okay. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
who also didn't make everybody's list either, but
right,
I'll make some comments after you.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad took the... Honorable Elijah Muhammad went to multiple schools to form what became the Nation of Islam. He went to the school of black Christianity, because his father was a pastor. He went to the school of the Masonic Lodge. Eventually got to the Shriners Lodge. That came a little later. He went to the school of Noble Drew Ali. He went to the school of Marcus Garvey. And after he came out of all them schools, he ended up forming one of the most longest standing and powerful institutions formed in black America. Amos Wilson says that Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the greatest psychologist ever produced by black America. And I thought that was profound, considering I consider Amos Wilson to be one of those people. But he says that Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the greatest psychologist, bar none, ever produced by black America. And of course, you know, Elijah Muhammad never made it past the 6th grade. So that's an amazing statement.
You know, I'm not even Muslim, but I can look at the body of work, and you have to ask yourself some questions and say, what other leader has come around and built an institution that has taken the most broken man and the most broken woman, gave them a higher sense of self and purpose, put them on a street corner in full professional attire, selling pies and newspapers as if it's their purpose, and continue that organization forward. And the organization still regenerates and it still moves forward after death. It's still moving forward. To me, which would make Elijah Muhammad one of the greatest constructors of an institution that we've seen in our American side of history. What do you say about that?
Well, you can't argue with the facts. I must say that he has a consistent definition of manhood, a consistent definition of womanhood, without which you cannot build healthy communities. None of the other civil rights organizations have anything close to that. They don't even have that as part of their vision. He has an economic agenda, whether you agree with it or not. He has an educational agenda, whether you agree with it or not. And he has a health and wellness agenda, whether you agree with it or not. And all of it is delineated and has been also well articulated. Whether you agree with it or not, at least he has it and has presented it through the formation of Nation of Islam. Also, every one of his students who has reached any level of prominence have always been able to kick a whole lot of booty. All right, whether you're talking about Warathdin Muhammad, whether you're talking about the brother son of man, Marvin Muhammad, whether you're talking about Muhammad Ali, whether you're talking about Malcolm X, Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan, and I can keep going on, but I'm just saying those are the more prominent ones. They can kick some butt. Most folks can't stand up to them because what they're kicking is some strong stuff in terms of nation building and self-sufficiency. I mean, who can argue with you should protect your women and that you should be able to feed, clothe, and shelter yourself?
Right. And so I wanted to bring this point up because we have a lot of different distractions and things in our community, in our mindsets that we know.
Yeah.
We should know prominent folks in our history to draw strength from.
Right.
Just like the common things that are known, whether it become the Michael Jordans or the Joe Montanas or the Larry Birds or the Magic Johnsons or the LeBron James or and a whole lot of them, right? You know, they have achieved a degree of, excuse me, Mac, the Ric Flairs.
Hey,
I didn't want to leave.
Hey, leave Ric Flair alone now. You're about to get a backhand shot.
Don't do it.
You know, but we must move to a degree of understanding,
right,
so that we can draw proper strength.
Yeah.
While you may see some videos of spectacular plays, highlight reels that motivate you of a Michael Jordan or a Magic Johnson or a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
right.
You may see some of those things to draw a degree of motivation to make you effective in your present day obstacles.
Right.
I'm just challenging folks to know your history, understand it to a degree, draw strength from this, because I ask you, how much football or wrestling did any of the people who we've named and talked about today watch? How much did they understand?
I mean, honestly, Amos Wilson deals with this, talking about assimilation as Negroes and a whole bunch of other stuff, but just talks about how one group of people is pointing at young people for wearing their pants off their butt, tattoos on the neck, and being involved in the quote-unquote ghetto life. And by the same token, and spending all that money on the tennis shoes, right?
Right.
And then the same one pointing the finger, can't wait to get off work, drink themselves into a stupor, watch the football game or the basketball game or the TV wrestling, and then they go spend their money outside of their community without seeing the connection between those activities and how the young person ends up with the pants off the butt and having a value system that where the tennis shoes and the jacket is more important than the grades, right?
Right.
So I'm just highlighting the contradictions that the scholar warriors have pointed out ad nauseum. And it frustrates me because if I can find them, then why can't the people who have the power to make greater changes inside the institutions where black people reside, why can't they find them?
Right. So I'm just going to challenge everyone to spend a little time, not just knowing it for Black History Month, but ingraining it in your psyche so you can also draw the appropriate strength from appropriate history and appropriate real stories that we have endured throughout this struggle of continuing progress. I know we've gone for 50 minutes. Matt, go ahead and hit our sponsors and our announcements.
See, you opened up Pandora's box and got on that soapbox, but he still watched wrestling with us for the rest of the time and cheered for the black man when he did not win.
The black man should have won.
He should have won. All right, so the announcement we have, also we make sure we honor our underwriters, Infinity Tax Service. That's Infinity Tax Service, 601-624-1055. Black owned and operated. Make sure you call the sister. You're getting your taxes. You want to get your credit straight. Make sure you understand about economics and saving also. We have a Mayor's Candidate Forum at Greater Agape on Sidewell Road and Highway 18 at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. That is Mayor Candidate Forum at Greater Agape on Sidewell Road and Highway 18 at 6:30 p.m. Those who have noted to say to be there will be Attorney Showboy Antar Lumumba, John Horn, Supervisor Graham, and I think they said there's one more missing. John Horn, Graham. But make sure y'all come out, come check it out, and get informed and participate and get as much. Oh, and the mayor himself, Tony Yarber, will be there.
You might not want to leave him out.
No, didn't want to leave him out. All right. The next one we got February the 9th. Make sure you go to the Black Business Banquet. It's 1835 West Northside Drive, right before you get to the little cross the tracks, get to the service station, get to the Bel Air. Make sure you go by there. That's the Black Business Banquet. You know, celebrating all the black businesses we have in the city of Jackson.
Tickets at the African Art Gallery and Marshall's Music and Bookstore and Bully's Restaurant.
Can you get them here also?
Oh, yes, right. You can also get them here at WNPR. You can get your tickets for the Respect Our Black Dollar Black Business Banquet here at WNPR, also at the African Art Gallery on 800 North Ferris Street, at the Marshall Music and Bookstore on 618 North Ferris Street, and also Bully's Restaurant.
All right. When we're talking about Buy Black and Think Black, Jackson Black Pages, make sure you can go to www.jacksonblackpages.com to register any black-owned business in the city of Jackson. If I had more time earlier, I would go through this stuff. 10 minutes. At jacksonblackpages.com to register any black-owned business in the city of Jackson. They are having a Black Business Expo March the 4th, 2017, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's free to the public. Make sure you go by. It's at the Rec Complex inside of the Walter Payton Center over by Jackson State. So make sure you go by there March the 4th. It's free to the public from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Now, that's talking about black and about us as men and things that we should do. Bring up to the recap from this past Saturday with the 100-man rally. The 100-man rally was a call to action, and we have to give credit, as me and D. Meads talked about, the men that showed up and stood fast. And some of the brothers had never had to stand in formation like that for a long period of time. And we had children, young brothers who learning, and they looked at the men that were there and wanted to be like the men, and they stood up, and they stayed as long as they could. And giving special thanks and shout out to Pastor Boyd, right there on the corner of Ellis and Robinson. Make sure you go see him, Pearl Street, AME. He stayed out there with us and supported. He spoke, he opened up, he was there to support. Minister Abram, representing the Nation of Islam from Pop Mart 9/11. He was there. Also, we called him the Dean, Brother Hollis Watkins. And we had their representative from Tougaloo College, Beta Rho, and Mu Sigma Chapter Phi Beta Sigma. Respect Our Black Dollar. And give it up from one of our favorite officers, Mr. Hayes, Officer Hayes out there.
Yeah, Popeye.
Oh, yeah.
Spanking.
Who came through, and he had a new recruit he was training, and he was teaching and showing a new recruit about engaging with community and spending time. And we talk about that's the way you lead. And he's a 16-year vet with JPD who has numerous certifications, SWAT team, bomb squad. A brother who's very active in the community. The same brother riding around with a police car full of toys around Christmas time. And those are black men that we had, and not to leave anybody out.
Don't forget our Masonic Lodge.
Yeah, we had the Masonic lodges. We had other church pastors that showed up. We had other brothers that came and wanted to be a part of what we were doing. We had some youth. Coach Bossy brought some youth there who stayed with us also through the fellowship. And a lot of those brothers got some real stories. So it's definitely a need for strong black men to stand up in their community, to go above and beyond the natural title that God gave us as provider and protector just for our family, but to take on our community. As we see right now, our community has been on attack for years. I don't think there's never been a time when it wasn't under attack.
It hasn't.
So now we have to figure out, as Councilman Stamp say, we will brave the cold for a football game, but we won't brave the cold to come out and rally and fellowship with our brothers. We're just asking brothers to come on out. This is not just a rally. There was a sit-down instructions on what we're going to do moving forward. There are several things coming up that we're going to be engaged in to increase the black male presence in our PTA meetings, PTO meetings, down at the Capitol, understanding what bills are going on, going door to door to do voter registration, block-to-block surveys, to increase black male participation in everything that's going on that we need to be showing at the forefront to lead the way for the next generation. So it will be second nature for them to do.
What's that? Hey, I had two questions. A,
yes, sir.
Why was everybody in suit, shirt, and tie? Mm-hmm. And also, why? What is that meeting that is supposed to take place on the 7th?
Well, everybody was in suit and tie because it's something I've learned to say this is strong black men dressed strike fear in the hearts of some and give motivation and hope to others. And numerous of people that said, I thought I heard you talking. The brothers look good. They're organized together and standing, wearing the multiple colors of representing their organizations. We are going to band together. February the 7th, the 100-man movement, if we could call it. If we could call it that, will be at the JPS school board meeting. That's just one place we will
Where's
be
the JPS school board meeting at?
It's located on State Street, and you would ask me that without the address.
No, you don't need the address. They know.
Yeah.
State Street downtown.
Down straight downtown.
What's Saturday?
And this Saturday, we're asking brothers to meet at Grove Park at 9 a.m., and we are getting out in the community to hit Bel Air to do voter registration and do block-to-block surveys. We're asking brothers to put boots, feet, Stacey Adams, whatever you put on your feet, on the ground and to call to action to actually get out. Some brothers complain about sports and different things being cut from the different programs in the school. But in order to be a part of that conversation, you have to be at the PTA and the PTO meetings. You have to be at the school board meetings.
You got to read to your babies.
You have to be there to understand why these things are happening and what we can do to champion this thing. So that's what we are doing. If you'd like to be a part, if you'd like to see some of the pictures, you can go to msmove.org, look at the Facebook feed. It's on Facebook or some of the pictures. The brothers stood out there. The wind was cutting, brother.
Man.
The wind was cutting, but I'm telling you, them brothers stood fast, wind blowing.
Wind made me cry,
made you
dried
cry.
my eyes, and made me cry again.
And we talk about champion economics, black economics, putting ourselves first and spending our money with us, spending our money on what's needed, learning how to save and invest in us. We talked about education, not just education with the education curriculum, but highlighting some of the 50 people we just talked about, educating ourselves so we can educate our children. Talk about spiritual health. Finally knowing who you are and who God created and what God created you to be. Regardless of what denomination or religion you are, understanding that you were created by Him for a purpose. We talked about manhood and brotherhood. What does it mean to be a true man? And true brotherhood is, are you going to let your brother go out and be hungry when you got a feast in front of you? We talk about health. Us black men, we wait to the last minute before we start trying to do something about our health after they done told us we got the sugars and the high blood pressure. So being proactive in that. But also we talked about politics. We talked about lead and electing and understanding the capacity of different positions in your city. As Councilman Stamps know, you should know your legislator the same way you know your favorite team. You should know the county supervisor. You should know the city councilman and know the capacity of those folks and what they can and cannot do, and look before they get in office. See what they're doing in their community. See how active they are, because you don't need a title to do anything. You don't need a title. So that's what the 100-man rally. We are moving forward, brother. We are moving forward, and we got great folks here educating, and please, we want to be a part. You know how to reach out to us.
Well, and as we wrap up, everyone, I just want to say thank you for everyone who participated in all the different events, because we have several events going on at the same time. Thanks to the brothers that respect our black dollars and sisters over there who are working hard and diligently moving forward. We got about 1 minute left to go on the show. Mr. Evers is out there chomping at the bit to come on in. And as we end every
praise
show,
God for His return.
Right, praise God for His return. As we end every show and every week, we say that, all white folks not good and all black folks not bad. But you got to figure out who you're going to deal with to put inside your circle and use some discernment to rebuild your village of your family and your community. Also, never let anyone put you in a position where you don't love your own people. Because when you hate your own people, you're part of the very oppression we're trying to lift ourselves out of. We got a lot of work to do, Jackson. We got a lot of work to do, Mississippi. But we can be the example. We can be the example of what other communities who don't enjoy what we see y'all next week. I love you. Handyman, take us out of here. Love y'all. Another good show. Need to know your history, just like you know football history.
I was supposed to be out here 35 minutes ago.
Yeah. But you kept talking.
Right. That's that Baptist. That's that Baptist preacher, isn't it?